How's it going? So, as you might imagine, I'm still working on my build here. But basically, the main premise behind making any build, and I'm a big fan of this, right? I think you ought to build for your first set, get yourself a full set of Aurus gear, okay? And then when you start wanting to tweak things, and you finally get past the Aurus shrivel, so to speak, because you want the core stats, I think, personally, just for the power rank. That helps whenever you're trying to do your chaos missions and you're doing base missions, basically. But then once you've actually got a set, then you can start nitpicking and start grabbing things like combo, for example, and then just chase the highest combo stat, for example. And this, and in my case, I'm running an arrow god archer class. Now, if you're running like a, say a holy guide, you're going to want to basically focus on getting stun in all your gear pieces. If you're running a barbarian like berserker build, you're going to be wanting to focus on counter. Now, there is obviously like the ones that are in between, like Sacred Hunter, for example. So again, just to kind of give you an insight on this, I guess it might make more sense for me to show you actually the class. Because again, I think a lot of people tend to vaguely remember what exactly these have to bring. Because, again, when I say berserker, right, we're really saying a warbringer, right? A warbringer is basically a heavy, because they're big into counter damage and reflection, so that's part of the reason why you go counter with them. Whereas like a martial sage, well, sure, they focus on counter. Their biggest bonus really is not really in counter. It's actually just absorbing. They're basically the tank class in this game. So they're going to want basically all the resistances and heavy, heavy, heavy amounts of resistance to find themselves in the best possible case. So they're going heavy on damage resistance. In the case of like the Sacred Hunter, it's a little bit less combo as it's more about criticals. And so their crit damage is super high. I mean, yeah, they're going to hit some combo. They're going to get a little bit more attack speed, but their main focus is actually in crit DPS. And so they're doing more damage on crits. And so that would mean that you're really going to focus more on crit damage, on the crit damage stat. So your crit rate would be more relevant for a Sacred Hunter. Whereas like in this build, it's more relevant to have combo because I'm running the Arrow God / Plume Monarch route where it makes more sense to have a lot of combo. If you go Prophet route, it's skill crit basically. I mean, yes, you want the energy regen, but you're ultimately focusing on trying to increase the amount of crit and the amount of stun you have. And so stuns and crit, I mean, obviously the big deal here is stuns, because stuns are going to trigger frequently if you have a high stun rate. That's what you would mostly focus on in a Prophet build. Dark Lord is more along those skill crit rates. I kind of mix these up from time to time. As you can tell, the Dark Lord's more of a skill crit. You're really more focused on skill crit in a Dark Lord build than you are, stuns. So again, I guess, sorry for the confusion, but basically the Prophet stuns, Dark Lord skill crit, Plume Monarch combo, Sacred Hunters is more crit rate, Warbringer's counter damage, and Martial Sage's damage resistance. Okay, in that order. So if you've ever wondered, like, what should I be focusing on in my gear sets, that's kind of the gist. Now, I mean, on the, like, well, regardless of what class I am, I still think you need to have a full set of Aurus, because I think the benefit of the core stats is major as far as, like, getting yourself progressively better, and then you can fine-tune it. Once you've got an Aurus set of gear, you can then start to fine-tune and get picky. You can start going, okay, I'm going to go Supreme and above, and I'm going to go for combo. Yeah, obviously, if you've already got your mindset, then obviously, yeah, get yourself a full set of Supreme combo, high stat combo gear, or vice versa. Whatever stat you're not necessarily going to be focusing on, focus on that and benefit yourself that way. That, I think, is ultimately the direction you want to go in. Now, in my combo build, okay, I told you guys that I was going to probably swap out the Blitz Assault and turn, I swapped it out for Disarm. This works a lot better. because basically I just added more time to the stun, I gave myself more shields, and then I have one skill that I'm just going to blast out over and over and over. Like, yes, is it effective? Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's a 16 turn pop, where these are 19 turn pops. You got to think in terms of what's going to fire off the most frequent amount, because the problem with Blitz is it's a 24 turn, where most of these are 19. It's a 24 turn pop. So you got to kind of think that through. You could just as easily, right, where this is 16, for another 3 turns, you could pop a Blade Pierce every time, or you could pop 100 slashes if you want that damage resistance. Now, some other ones that are close seconds to the idea that I had in mind was, I could go for like a Crimson Moonfall, where it's a pop every 8 seconds of 2000 damage. But you're going back to skill damage, and it's like any type of skill damage you do is going to ultimately kind of depend. So like a Worldly Snare would be really good in a Sacred Hunter build, the same way a Star Array was really handy in general for even Dark Lords, but even in the case of a Prophet build, it's really handy for that. And so in a way, I feel as though like most of the builds that I've ever really designed, like even Draconic Resonance, I think is going to be helpful in the case of like those warrior builds that are not the Warbringers of the game, right? But they're more towards that sacred, oh, the frick, well, what is it? God damn it. You'd think I'd remember the name of these classes by heart, but as much as I have learned to know them, I don't know them all. Okay, Martial Sage. The Martial Sage would probably benefit a lot more with a Draconic Resonance than it would anything else. But anyway, the point being is like in the skill set that I have, I'm using Wild Guess simply as a placeholder right now, because I feel like ultimately what I'm going to probably drift towards to really do more and more damage is, even though, yeah, this is doing 3000 AoE, it's popping every 16, I'm either going to eventually drift into grabbing Crimson Moonfall and try doing DPS that way, or I could go 100 slashes and try to get the basic attack damage resistance and the 0.5% attack bonus that you gain from 100 slashes and go that route. It's just, I feel like you could also make the case for Blade Pierce, and I think Blade Pierce might make a more sensible option, I think, if we're really thinking about it in the long term, but I won't really know that until I get these skills actually upgraded and start to really test this combo build out. But the main thing here is that right now what makes this skill, this particular build shine so well is I've got a really high combo rate, and then I'm working on combo multiplier. And then I have to ask around a little bit, because I'm by no means a goddamn expert, but, I'm making my head strong ways, like right now the Fox is working great, the Bird's helping that attack speed, we've got the CD, I think anything increasing your active CD is huge. I mean, that's just going to ultimately make a lot of sense whenever you're popping your active skill over and over and over. Obviously, once I get the Octopus, I'm going to probably need to swap one of these out, and I'm not so sure if I'm going to just decide to swap out the Fox for it and rely less on stuns and go for more combo damage, or if I'll turn around and, even decidedly, maybe I, instead of popping maybe more and more on the Hydra Sprite side of it, maybe I'll just swap this out for Octopus instead and keep that Fox in there for the stuns. I don't know. I mean, and yeah, I've seen some people that they'll go for the deer and go for damage resistance, and yeah, there's a case to be made for that. Now, like Treasure Dragon, I've kind of been trying to decide, like, is this better or worse? It's good in the fact that it gives you skill crit rate, which was helpful in a Holy Guide build. It's very helpful in a Dark Lord build. I mean, even a basic attack crit damage increase is going to be huge if you're playing like, so like say for example, you're a Sacred Hunter, you're going to want that basic attack crit damage. That's all going to be huge for you. In the same way that like the Rainbow Guardian toothpaste is going to be super big in your Warbringer builds. It's just kind of a fundamental, or even the Electric Pup for the Warbringer builds. It's part of the reason why people focus on those, right? I mean, even crit rate increases are, so Benny's going to be helpful if you're going to be going Sacred Hunter. Toothpick Eggplant, for example, is another, that's all directed towards players that are going to be doing that particular type of build. You might be wondering, though, why not use somebody like the Snow General, which is reducing enemy attack speed, and or using Cowboy Cactus for that extra damage on the basic attacks. It's like, yeah, I think you could potentially find a gain in that, but I don't know. It's kind of like when I was using the Cat Prince. or even going down with Tipsy Snail, where you can reduce enemy movement speed by 40%. These are all benefits and gains. I mean, hell, you can even do a Fiery Tail and increase your skill damage. It just depends on how reliant you're going to be on skills versus basic attack. That's really ultimately where the decision has to be made for you. And that all depends on really kind of what, if any, mounts do you have. Like I feel like mounts kind of empower you to even decide more on this than anything else. Like in my case, if I, now that I've drifted away from Cloud Drifter, so if in a Holy Guide build, I'll want skill crit and I want stun as much as possible. So anything that bonuses that's going to be huge. But now that I'm kind of more focused on combo, right, and the idea behind this is you want to either increase your basic attack or you want to get lots and lots of combo, you probably noticed Adaptoslime. This is kind of an interesting one because it increases attack by 15% for 10 seconds when HP drops below 80%. You gain a shield equal to 10% of max HP for 10 seconds when HP drops below 60%. And it reduces damage taken by 15% for 10 seconds when HP below 30. Okay, so Adaptoslime's pretty interesting in that basically it's going to be a huge buff in PvE, I think. You're going to see a lot of people pick it up for the shield that it's going to drop, and it's going to give you consistent shields. The other noticeable one, okay, and I'll show you here, is the, let me see if I can find it here. Because obviously you've seen Adaptoslime, but, see, let me poke around here. I don't think it's out yet, actually, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. But Purple Wing's another noteworthy one. But, I mean, anyway, the main thing is that Adaptoslime, you've got that to look towards. Of course, in the case of morphs for this, I mean, it's like you can do basic attack AoE damage with the Thunder Wrath. The Eye of Raven's going to give you some active skill bonuses. The Candy Gatling is good for basic attacks, combos, and counters. And then, I don't know. I mean, is it good? Is it ideal? I don't know. I mean, it's good, but not super good. It's kind of like the Skyward Blade for a lot of players. There's a ton of people using it for the basic attack damage. You could honestly probably make the same case for the Spring Cord, being that it deals 1,000% of current basic attack AoE damage and confuses targets. Each of their own attacks, basic attacks, combos, and counter strikes and skills will deal an extra 20% of their current basic attack damage to themselves, and the confusion lasts for 5 seconds. Like, the Spring Cord's kind of useful, but like not super big by any means. I feel like with the 11-second timer, it kind of throws it behind. Like, you kind of want the things that fire off right away, in my opinion. I mean, unless you're just trying to stun in time. And that's really, I think, kind of where that comes into play. But needless to say, that's everything is regarding this build, and also kind of in general, like some stuff to look forward to. Hopefully you guys saw the Adaptoslime as interesting as I did, and I'll see you guys. But make sure you check out this if you want to save some money.